Thank you. The bumblebee theory states that this roly-poly insect with itty-bitty wings shouldn't be able to fly, but nobody ever told the bumblebee that he couldn't, so he does. Scientists and engineers actually have done all their calculations way back in the early 1900s, and they support that the bumblebee can fly with all their analyses and the rate of flapping and vortices. But I prefer to look at this story from the bumblebee's perspective, that nobody told me I couldn't, so I can. And that's what I want for you by the end of my presentation, is for you to look more at the possibilities and what can be done instead of what might not be able to or what can't be done. How are we going to do that? We are going to kapow, bust some assumptions that you hold about yourself, that you hold about other people, and that you hold about situations. If you take a look at the picture I have up here, most of you will see a horse's head. But if you turn your head just a little bit sideways, you're probably going to start to see the frog on the lily pad on the little pond. And if you don't see it yet, I'll show it to you later. But the point is, unless we start to change the way that we look at things, things aren't going to turn out any differently. And I'm actually going to get you in the mood for this change and this thought process by asking you to do something right now in your chairs real quickly. I'm going to ask you to change something that's going to make you just a little uncomfortable. So if you have a watch, like I do, on your left wrist, I want you to move it to your right. Or maybe if you have earrings on, I want you to pull them out. Or if you have your shoes on the correct feet, I want you to put them on the wrong feet. But I want you to just change one thing and see how long during my presentation you can hold that new feeling, that new experience.
Should I write right-handed?
You could also write right-handed, that would work too. So when we start to change the things, the way we behave, the way we see things, then things are going to change for us, and that's the point of where we're going. I want to start first with the assumptions we hold about ourselves. I mean, what do you really think about yourself? How great are you? What I want to do is make sure you're focusing on your strengths and your assets and how you could use those more effectively in your work for greater performance. So I'm going to ask you to think about 3 areas of where you hold strengths and certain assets. And I'll give you an example of what mine are so that you can kind of see what I'm asking you to think about. The first area is personal, and I've listed some things up there like confidence and analytical skills. As an engineer, I was trained to be analytical. I believe that I had naturally talents in that. Math was always my favorite subject. But that problem-solving process helps me in everything that I do, even in my fitness classes when I have a troublemaker. Okay? The second area is relational, how you interact with other people. That can be compassion, it can be empathy, it can be listening. I am actually a professional listener. I've been trained as a credentialed coach to listen to not only the words that you say, but what's underneath that, the emotions that you're expressing beyond that, the body language that goes with that, how you stretch words out or not, there's all meaning in that. And that helps me as I'm a speaker, I'm a writer, I'm a trainer, I'm a coach, I'm a mom. It helps me in all my relationships, work or personal. And the last area there is situations. So I've told Jan that I am actually, I'm a Catholic, big Catholic family. I have 7 brothers and sisters, and I have 5 brothers. I went to engineering school, outnumbered in engineering school. I'm also now outnumbered in my home, 3-to-1, male to female. So I feel that those situations, that situation of being surrounded by men all my life, has really given me some insight and perspective that maybe some other people that didn't have 5 brothers and didn't get surrounded by men all the time would have. So these are my assets that I see in those 3 different areas. And whether you do it right now and think about some of those things, or whether you do it for homework, I want you to think about your assets in those areas. And are you utilizing them effectively right now? How could you utilize them more effectively? And those of you that have teams, what are their assets, and are they getting the opportunity to use those? Have we made assumptions that, oh, well, this is my job, and it won't let me do this, it won't let me be this, maybe it really will. So that's one of the first assumptions that I want you to take is, whatever your assets are, there is probably an opportunity for you to use them in your work, and we just haven't thought about it before, so let's start thinking, okay? The other area, another area in the personal area of looking at assumptions about ourselves, is that our ideas. We make assumptions about our ideas, whether people will go for it or not. We make assumptions about other people that come to us with ideas. Oh my gosh, there he comes again. And you start shaking your head, and you run when certain people come. So I'd like to give you a formula on how you can handle some of these assumptions that we have about ideas. And the assumption formula is like, concern, suggest. So when someone comes to you with an idea, or when you have an idea, this is the response that we'd like to see. It gives the idea a chance instead of shooting it down. And to give you an example, I have a little chart here, and on the left I made a bunch of adjectives, and the right has a bunch of nouns. And oh, lo and behold, look what you selected, expandable house. That's your new idea. So you present that idea to me, and what do I say? I say, ooh, what I like about that idea. What I like about that idea is I have 2 sons getting married 6 weeks apart, coming up in December and January. And I told you we have big families, right? So when they all come to town, it'd be so awesome to have an expandable house. That's why I like your idea. Everybody can stay in the house, and when they leave, the house will shrink back down. I won't have as much to clean. That's a wonderful idea that you have. But, oh, there's a but. Did I say but? There's a little bit of a concern, because if our house keeps shrinking and expanding, then it's going to develop cracks. So I suggest that you start to look at some different kinds of materials that might be able to handle that. So how can you use this formula to bust some assumption about ideas? When someone's coming at you with an idea to you, don't just shake your head and run away or think, oh, here they come again. I want you to dig deep down and go with the formula of what do you like about it. It's not the whole idea, but there's a little piece in there that you could or do like. But you've got some concerns. That's why you were going to knock their idea down. So share those concerns with them, and also kind of brainstorm with them or give them your ideas on how they might change that, what suggestions you have. And then there's our ideas that maybe we're scared to share because we know people are going to shoot it down, but use the formula on the other people. You know, I know that this seems kind of crazy, but what do you like about it? What concerns do you have that are making you shake your head? And what suggestions might you have, or could we brainstorm some ideas? So these assumptions that we have about our ideas and other people's, if you start to look at it a little differently with this formula, we're going to have some greater performance, because all these people are going to start to share their ideas because we're really listening to it. The last piece of the personal aspect of assumptions is our self-talk, how we talk to ourselves. Do we shoot ourselves down all the time? Oh my gosh, I can't believe I made that mistake. I can't believe I did that. Oh. Or do you pump yourself up? There's a little video that's been going around on Facebook. Her name is Jessica in the video, a little girl. I don't know how old she is, 3 or 4. And she's in the bathroom mirror in the morning, and she just loves everything, and everybody's going to be great, and everything is going to be great. So be more like Jessica. But what I'm going to ask you to do again is I want you to pick an area of your life. It could be your health and fitness, like you guys are talking about with this is the put on weight committee. It could be your health and fitness. It could be your romance. It could be your finance. It could be your business. It could be your team. I'd like you to pick one of those areas, any of those areas in your life. And what I want you to do, you can start to think about it now, but for homework, I want you to write down all the things that you do want to happen. So if it's with your team and your work, I want everyone to realize the strengths that they have and find a way to utilize those to help our business grow. I want us to triple our revenue from this month to next month. Whatever it is, I want you to write the things that you do want to happen. Now, sometimes I've seen coaches and other people have you first write all the things you don't want, because sometimes it's easier to pick out the things we don't want to happen and then just flip it to each don't want, change it into your do want. So if that's going to work for you, go ahead and do that. But I'd like you to really focus on that exercise. It could take you a few minutes. But every morning and every night, once you have your list, I just want you to look at the do-wants. And whether you meditate with a beer for breakfast or a prayer or whatever you do at night to help you go to sleep, look at that list. Not as a things to do list, but just to open your mind. And why do I think it's going to work? I mentioned to you that I have a very large family, right? And when we were little, 10 airline tickets were very cost prohibitive. So we drove most everywhere on vacation. And you've got to entertain yourself when you're driving across the country. And one of the games that we played was Punch Bug Slug Bug. And some of you may or may not be familiar with it. And what punch bugs are Volkswagen Beetle cars. And when you would see a Volkswagen Beetle car, you would yell out, "Punch Bug Slug Bug." And you would very gently tap your brother or sister on the arm and yell out the color of the bug, right? That was a wonderful, fun game that we played for many hours. But what it did is those Volkswagen Beetles were always there. They were driving on the freeway next to us. They were in parking lots that we passed. But we didn't see them before until we started playing that game. And then we saw them everywhere. And that's what I believe is going on with you. You've got all these opportunities. You've got all these things that could be about you. But because we're focused on something else or what's not working, whatever, we don't see them. And so I think that exercise is going to help you focus on the possibilities. And I think you'll be surprised what you see that might not have you've seen before, because it's really all there. So let me know in 21 days. Some psychologists say it takes longer than that, maybe 2 months. But let me know what happens for you in the next few weeks or months because you're doing that exercise. So we've looked at assumptions about ourselves, and I want to look at assumptions about other people. There's an exercise that I do when I do a training class related to assumptions about other people. And I ask the audience to raise their hand if they can say yes to certain questions. And how it goes is, but I tell them not to raise your hand right away. I want them to look around the room and see if they can pick out the people that could answer yes to the question. So some of the questions have to do with, well, do you like beer? So when I ask that question, I have look around the room, see if you can pick out the beer drinkers. And then I have the beer drinkers raise their hand. And were you right about who was a beer drinker? And some people get some of them, right? And some other questions I ask is, who's sporting a tattoo? Right? Who's sporting a tattoo in the room? Who's been to an Italian opera? Not did you like it or not, but have you been to one? And the last one that really works well in Texas, we get a lot of people in the room that have done this, is if I brought a quarter horse into the room, could you saddle that baby up, mount that horse, and actually get it to do something on purpose instead of out of control? And what happens with that exercise is most of the time we are wrong about what we think people can do, are, whatever it is. But what happens is that's what we do all the time. Now granted, we have to make assumptions about people. We have to make some assumptions that this meeting would still be here, right? You assumed that. You came here and showed up today. But what happens is we run up this ladder of inference, which is we observe data, we have experiences, and then we start to select the data that we collect about those experiences. We start to make assumptions about people, about things. We draw conclusions. We actually end up adopting beliefs. This is now our belief. And then we start to take action based on what we believe. There was a woman in my cycling class. The indoor cycle classes always get overbooked, and so they have a waiting list. And there was a brunette woman who was on the waiting list, and she saw a blonde woman getting onto a bike. And she started to get upset. She's like, this woman is getting on my bike. That's supposed to be my bike. Those blondes, they feel entitled. She's taking my bike. I've seen it before. Here it is again. All right? So I kind of cracked up because, ooh, she's going right up that ladder. It turns out that the blonde was supposed to be on the bike. All right? There was a mix-up with the list, and she apologized profusely, but something happened in her life before. She started to collect data about blondes, and then that became her belief, and she acted in a certain way. So what can you do to stop doing that? Part of it is just realizing you're doing it. Know that you are. Okay? And start to look at all the truths, the stories you tell yourself about certain things, about people. What if the opposite were true? How would you act differently? And then do that. Check the assumptions. Just like we checked the assumptions in my story about, do you like beer in the room? Who could actually get on the horse? We checked those assumptions to see if people could really do that. So check some of those assumptions that you have going on in your head. Because I'll bet some of them have been leading you up the ladder, and it's time to jump off and start back at the bottom and collect some different data. Okay? The last area of assumptions is the way we see situations. I don't know if any of you have heard of this scientific experiment, but they really took a glass aquarium and they put a northern pike. I'm from Michigan, so I eat pike. And then pike like to eat minnows. They put in that glass aquarium, they put a partition, and they put the pike on one side and they put all the minnows on the other side. And the pike kept trying to get to the minnows because he was hungry, bumping his nose up against the partition. He finally kind of gave up. This isn't going to work. They took the partition out. The minnows actually swam around the pike, and the pike almost starved to death. He's kind of like, that? I couldn't get him before. Nothing's changed. Why should I be able to get him now, right? We don't realize our situations have changed. And they call this the Pike Syndrome. And here's some examples of what that means, especially ignoring differences in situations. I actually had my own Pike Syndrome about a week or so ago. There's a street in my neighborhood that was under construction. And no matter what time of day or night, even midnight when the workers weren't there, you had to go 20 miles an hour. So I got on that road the other day. I literally looked at the speed limit sign, saw 20 in my head, and kept going down that road 20. When I came back the other way, finishing my errand, going the other direction, I noticed the speed limit sign was 30. I'm like, what? So when I got back to where I'd gotten on the road and turned and looked at the original speed limit sign that I had looked at that said 20, I was sure it was 30. There's my own Pike Syndrome. I was so used to this, I got my head set in that, I literally even saw the sign say 20 and it really said 30. So a lot of times we get ourselves in situations when you're, at work, the same management, whatever it is, you think it's going to be like this, and you don't try new things because you think you're going to get the same result. And in reality, bless you, everything's changed. Everything's changed. See, there's an assumption I made about Germany. When I went to Germany, I was in the airport for a layover, and when I sneezed, I thought everyone would say Gesundheit, but they don't say that. They actually say something different. Okay, so we've got these three different areas. Our personal assumptions, assumptions we have about other people, assumptions we have about situations. How do we change? How do we get to not be doing that? Well, I said you have to first be aware that you're doing it. You have to assess your assumptions. Are they true or not? And then we've actually got to take a risk. We've got to make a change. What change are you going to make? I want you to pick one of those areas. Is it the way that you look at other people? Is it the way that you look at your own talents and your own strengths? Is it the way that you've assessed some situations? Clarify a goal. I'm going to do this. I'm going to SMART goals, specific, measurable, agreeable, reasonable, time frame. Some of you have heard that before, but if you're going to set a goal, we got to make sure that there's a way to check that we've done it. Evaluate the different ways you could accomplish the goal. So suppose you were going to get a new job. You wanted to do something totally different. You could totally quit whatever you were doing right now. Just give it all up and go out and try to find something else. You could go tell your boss, I'm done, right after breakfast this morning. I'm done, it's over. You could start to, if you're in a corporation, you could post within there. You could start to talk to people. You could go get some education. There's a number of different ways to accomplish the goal. You got to think about your risk tendencies. What kind of a risk taker are you? There's informal ways that I do that. I play some games with people with the red light, green light, a sidewalk game when we were kids to see what kind of risk taker you are. There's formal assessments. I use a creatrix with my coaching clients that looks at your risk taking and your creativity and how you can move forward with that. But look at what would you be comfortable with but push you just a little bit more, which way you can increase your chances of success by partnering up with buddies or trying to do a little test market. And then the last thing is to take action. So we've got to look at, be aware of what we're doing, kind of assess whether it's the truth or not, and then take a risk to make a change. So I asked you guys to change something, and I'm going to talk with you after about that little change. But why did I have you change something? Because when you actually do something a little different, when you make something a little bit uncomfortable, you start to be more aware of everything else that's going around. And they actually did I think it was a weight loss test. The people that wanted to lose some weight, they did an experiment with them. They just had them drive a different route to work, or they had them use their left hand instead of their right to eat. They changed something that wasn't really related to diet and exercise, and those people lost weight because it made them more aware. So that little change something about this, it kind of perked your brain a little bit. Ooh, something's different. And that's what's going to work for you to change your thoughts, to change your mind, to change your world. So stay open to possibilities, and thank you for joining me this morning.